What industry secret do you know that most people don't? Worked with a lot of banks and their IT systems. You wouldn't believe how old and fragile they are. It's a wonder it's not all coming crashing down. On the Texas House floor, people push the buttons to vote for members who aren't even present that day. This happens multiple times, on every single thing they vote for. The reason why the kid fell off the Orlando free fall ride. Any ride with an over-the-shoulder restraint system works by using a proximity sensor to let the computer system know where the restraint is locked. The ride can't move unless all the sensors sense the correct metal at the correct position. On some rides you can move the sensor a few millimeters for proper alignment. Not enough to make a difference. On the free fall ride, someone in management might have wanted to modify a few seats for larger guests. Someone might have told a maintenance worker to move the sensor, which allowed the ride to start with the restraint in a position not in the original design. With this modification, the restraint would be at more of a 45 or so degree angle instead of directly downward. This may or may not have been done with an engineer's approval. This may or may not have been done with the ride vendor's permission. Any procedure like this is strictly prohibited from any standpoint in the amusement rides industry. I can't explain why they thought it was okay. In most situations you wouldn't be able to move the sensor much without detaching the bracket and moving the whole thing to a different location. Again, this wouldn't even be discussed anywhere I have ever worked. But they might have at Icon Park. The details of this mechanical procedure never made the headlines in Florida because all the lawsuits were settled. In the end, someone decided to change the position of that sensor. We will probably never know who. There is probably a maintenance worker who was ordered to do so. I've worked on enough restraints to know that it was not an accident. Personally, I would have refused to do it, and so would almost everyone that works on these things. If you find an extra nugget in your order, it wasn't a mistake. You got a cool employee. Your lobster tail at Outback is microwaved. The New York Times bestseller list has a lot of people on it who buy massive numbers of their own books. Worked in online community management and social media for years, admins can read all of your PMS. Private only means private from the masses, not from administration. We had to be able to read them to check reports of abuse, grooming, illegal activity, etc. I can't tell you how much cringe-worthy shit I had to read through, especially from guys trying to hook up. I don't know if this is really a secret, but something I encountered that I thought was interesting because I'd never seen it or considered it before. I work in closed captioning, and part of that workflow sometimes means doing a first pass on a project to an early version of the video. I think people would be surprised at how rough those early videos can be. Some dialogue, particularly when the character's mouth is not in the shot, is often not spoken by the characters saying it because it's temporary ADR that will get filled in by the actor later on. I've seen files where they don't even have temporary voiceover, it's literally just text on the screen saying, ADR line, this is a line of dialogue that this character is going to speak in this scene. You also occasionally get to see characters acting in front of green screens, or you'll see all the safety gear / wires before it gets edited out. One of my favorite things, though, is rough special effects. Sometimes it looks like someone using editing software for the first time, creating a crappy fire overlay for what will eventually be an actual effect, or still images just being dragged around a screen. My all-time favorite was when a scene featured an animal attack, and the animal in the early video was a box with a text label on it just vaguely wriggling around while the actor reacted to it. I don't think it's that crazy or anything, but like the viewer almost never gets to see it because it's all edited out and fixed by the time the show goes to air. It's just really funny and catches you off guard sometimes. If you're nice to hotel staff, they are more likely to give you free shit. I'm an academic researcher and I can speak for a huge number in my field when I say, if you want access to our studies and they're behind a paywall, you can email us and we will send you the study. We are genuinely delighted to share, and if you want further context for the results or what have you, I'll always try my best to oblige. The only limitus on that last bit is that 1. The original data for the study might have reached the end of our right to keep it, in which case it will have been destroyed. 2. I might have forgotten details, or I might have written that paper during a particularly hectic time and my file system might be total shit. Also, a lot of us are on ResearchGate and various social media things, so you can contact us through there. If you can't contact us directly or we're being slow, one of the other authors on the paper might be contactable. Google sucks so much now because around a decade ago, they abandoned the measurement known as page utility, which just measured the usefulness of the site itself. Instead, they migrated to expertise authority trust, which had good intentions of stopping the proliferation of bad info, but instead it basically resulted in prioritizing large corporations and capital over any sites created by average people. The contract workers known as raters they employed to help determine the best search results became an echo chamber, as there were strict demands on exactly what the right answers were in most cases, and straying from the expectations of Big G resulted in poor reviews and possible firing. Of course, we were not allowed to say the G word, we could only say the client. It's about to get worse, too. They just laid off a huge swathe of them. If your baby goes to a nursery/daycare, chances are those weren't their first steps/words etc. that you witnessed. Industry standard is to not tell parents when these things happen, as it makes them feel bad. I've seen kids up and walking about the room for weeks, even months before their parent proudly announced at drop-off that they took their first steps last night. Trained artist here. Most oil paints are made with very toxic substances, as are most paint thinners and mediums. Every single one of my teachers was either very sick, cancer, Meniere's disease, or a bit crazy, eating chalk, licking pallets. All incredible artists I was privileged to learn from. One lesson I learned very well: I wear gloves and sometimes a mask when I paint. Edit. I mentioned Meniere's because one of my favorite teachers had it. I worked closely with him and his suffering holds a large place in my memories of school. While I think the exposure to toxins didn't do him any favors, I should not have implied a correlation. I apologize. To those asking, no paint was licked off pallets. They had just been cleaned with denatured alcohol, and he always led with, "Now you could eat off them," before waggling his tongue on the glass. Loved the shock factor, that guy did. Cannabis testing labs with higher fees will also return higher THC numbers. Most industrial places are really not as well maintained as they should be. I worked in politics. There are a lot of people who write to a politician like they're a celebrity. They receive love letters and all kinds of weird stuff. There's also quite a sizable part of their mail that is comprised of people asking for a photo with an autograph. Way more than you think. Some because they're admirers, others because they collect them, and then some other cases you don't really want to know about. I've worked for a female politician, trust me, you don't want to know. The dirty little secret within the secret is that the politicians I knew didn't sign anything. They had a machine, https://myparis.com/n/signature-machine/28-stillowriter.html, that did all the signing for them. So technically the autographs were not even real. Live audio engineer. Sometimes they're faking it. I've had to mic drum sets where the cables went nowhere. I've had to ask a keyboard player if they were having trouble, because they were playing, but nothing was coming out of their channel. Don't even get me started on pitch correction, teleprompters, guide tracks, ghost musicians, backing tracks, etc. Some appetizers are the most labor-intense items on the menu to make. For example, dumplings takes one worker about an hour to make 12 to 15 orders. If you want to know where I'm getting at, if a restaurant offers a plethora of appetizers options, then there's a high chance a lot of them are store-bought and resold because there's no feasible way to prepare several orders for each item on the menu. The news about Boeing is not a surprise to me at all. The amount of resources that they are able to delegate in an effort to deter whistleblowers is unfathomable to the average American/EU citizen. I'm a casino manager. It is definitely possible, more likely than you think, to win money in the short term. For example, if you walk in, bet on red/black on roulette, it's reasonably close to 50/50ths, not quite because of zero. You might do this once, double your money and leave. Congratulations. You will always lose in the long term. Always. Anyone that thinks they have some kind of system is a sucker. A game would not make it into the casino floor if the maths have not been rigorously checked and long-term simulations run to confirm. Asterisk exception to this is poker. The casino will always have a rake or time charge to make their money, but there is no reason you cannot consistently win money if you are skilled enough. I saw how slot machines for casinos were designed. Don't play slots. When I used to work for Hyatt, if the minibar was used and not declared but the value was under $15, they wouldn't bother billing for it because it gave off an appearance that it wasn't synonymous with a 5-star hotel. I make wildlife films for big streamers and broadcasters. The sound is all either library or Foley. Data protection. Most companies misuse your personal data. Even the ones with a better grasp of the law and a data protection team are cutting lots of corners. I wrote an original movie a few years ago. Totally original. Totally my idea. When it finally aired on TV, it said based on a true story. Also, it wasn't Fargo.